Welcome to It's Personal, Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway.
And I'm Cameron Conway.
And this podcast is a very personal look at personal finance in Canada. Welcome to It's Personal Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway, here with Cameron Conway. And if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, or the Yukon, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. This week, I wanted to talk about an incredibly important number for you. And today's episode is going to be all about your savings rate. But it's not just about savings rate. It's also about ability, willingness, and time. But we're going to go over some important metrics to help you along the way.
Yeah, and part of these important metrics will be a different way to kind of come up with that number rather than just reading a Dave Ramsey book or picking a random number off of a D20 die.
Well, it's true. There's so many quick and dirty ways out there to get to this, but we wanted to give you a little bit more concrete effort here and a little bit more guidelines that you can use to kind of make your own determination about what makes sense. And we're going to share with you a few articles that we found today that we thought were pretty helpful in benchmarking and giving you some other ideas about what's happening around there right now.
Yes, totally didn't find today, as in the day we recorded this.
Totally did not find everything today. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So let's talk about people that come into our planning office. And there's generally, if I wanted to set archetypes, there's generally two different kinds of people that we work with. The first are the kinds that I affectionately kind of call creators. These are people that have in mind the end goal already. They know what they want to do, they know what they want to achieve, but they might be a little bit sticky on how to get there. They might not have that plan, they might not have the back testing or the alternates done, they might need some help with tax or inflation integration, but they kind of know where they want to go.
Yes, they want to go into the future with a little bit of money in that bank account.
Absolutely. Well, and the other kind of archetype are people that come in and they kind of have a whatever happens will happen, that kind of laissez-faire attitude towards life, towards retirement, maybe towards debt as well. These are the kind of people that maybe show up in my office after something major has happened to them, like a job loss or another major transition, and they come in and they say, I thought I had more time. They assume everything's going to work out, but they don't really know what they're going to do. And these people we find are asking very different questions. Some are asking, what do I want? What do I want to create? What do I want to build? And the other is saying, what will I have with what I've already done? Or if nothing at all, what will I have if I start today?
Yeah, and of these two groups, the second one is usually the more common. This is the one where either you put off savings because either you didn't have the money to do so, you didn't have the willingness to do so, you didn't think it was important enough, or time just kind of snuck up on you, where the people in the first group are that more of a minority, but with Braun, we're trying to help people become more of that first group to figure out what it is you're trying to build and establish. And then what we're going to talk about a lot today is to kind of how to figure out what rate will make things work best if you're in that first category.
Well, actually, the beauty of it is both of these types of people can have a similar metric to look at to come to the right answer. So even though, yes, we love creating with the creators and we like to take the other people and say, okay, here's what you need to do to get back on track, all of these can be solved, like you said, Cam, with those three factors. If someone has the willingness to do this, if they have the availability of some cash flow, and if they have time, those three elements working together are the recipe for a really good plan. So that's when we talk about the one thing that unites us all in this. And this is what today's episode is going to be all about, and it's the savings rate.
Oh, I thought you were going to say crippling debt.
No, it's about savings rate because we're talking about how we can proactively build for ourselves something that we didn't have before, something that we can get excited about. And even though the savings rate in reality becomes, another place that money is going, it's something that when you attach it to vision and you attach it to goals and lifestyle, even if it doesn't happen for a period of time, that can generate its own type of excitement that can keep you motivated over the years as you're doing that savings. So it's not just another bill payment. It's, this is my money for this lifestyle, this vacation I want to take, this lifestyle in retirement, what I want to accomplish.
And then for some of you, you might actually have to look at it as a bill payment. This is something that I need to do to keep the lights on in the future, not just today. So some people, it depends on where your mentality is at. You might need to shift one way to another. One, it needs to be a little bit more laid back. This is something good. I'm building towards the future. Or some people, this is just an uncomfortable thing you have to pay every single month, like your lights and gas and hydro and your car and food and everything else. It is saving so you can pay those same bills years from now when you don't want to work anymore.
See, two different types just between Cam and I today. Someone wanting to create and someone wanting to be very practical and pragmatic about it. Neither approach is wrong. We're just trying to make sure that whatever works for you and your mentality is the approach that we'll take to make it happen. Now, this conversation about savings rate, in my mind, goes hand in hand with a conversation about expenses. Going into retirement with the lowest expenses possible. We're not going to beat this one to death today because we've talked about it at length in other episodes, but I will say that when you focus on savings rate, when you start paying yourself like a bill or you start working towards your creation, this is when you're elevating yourself in the sense that you're already attributing a big percentage of your income to something else. Hence, you learn to live on less. So this helps you going into retirement because now you're not shooting for 100% of your take-home pay plus, plus, plus. You're already used to that built-in reduction.
Well, not only that, but anytime you read an article or like some sort of academic journal or even just some personal finance guru, they're always kind of in the back of their head thinking just to themselves that you are spending 70% of what you did before retirement because they're assuming your mortgages are paid off. So you're not spending the same now. So this is where the numbers kind of get blurred a little bit because a lot of these numbers assume it's like at least 70% of current income and there's a lot less debt to deal with in retirement.
Well, and let's face it, that's just not the reality for so much of us anymore. So we're adjusting with it. We're adjusting what we can control. And like we'll go into in a few moments, what you can control, grabbing those things, taking them by the horns, that is the most power you will have in all of this. That's where your power lies. And I'll show you all of that in just a minute. But let's define, what are we talking about? What is your savings rate? So let's put a metric around that right now. Simply put, your savings rate is the percentage of your income that you're putting towards your savings. A lot of people will look at this and they'll take their gross income and they'll just kind of divide out the amount that they're saving and say, okay, good enough, that's my percentage. I think that it's really important to take into account your taxes as well, because as we increase our income levels, our taxes go up as well. So we have to factor that in. So you can have different savings rates. You can have one for long-term goals, midterm goals, short-term goals. You can have one for retirement, but all of those things together, basically anything that you're doing today to help for tomorrow, added together as a dollar amount, can be calculated as your savings rate.
Yeah, and some of the benefits we have here in Canada with like RRSPs, you can actually use these savings to kind of lower your year-end taxes. So if you take advantage of your RRSPs, you can knock that down a little bit, or you can play the TFSA game and get some like tax-free growth out of it. But these are a lot of incentives to kind of make sure you are actually putting that money aside for later.
Absolutely. No one wants to see more than has to going towards the government, going towards the CRA at the end of the year, right? So as our income increases, as our ability to take on some of these strategies increases, a lot of people do find ways to do that to lower those tax bills. So let's start by looking at those three differentiating factors. The first is willingness. You have to want to do this. You have to want to do this enough that you're willing to put real hard money against it and forego experiences today. You also have to have availability of cash flow. So that means either taking a hard look at the budget, reducing expenses now, increasing income, any of these variable factors to create that cash flow that you can then apply to future savings. And of course, time plays a huge role. The age and the amount of money that you already have saved are key in determining your personal savings rate. We'll talk a little bit more about that soon, but like I said, where you are today at your personal starting line is going to be one of the more important factors on what you need to do next.
Yeah, and I guess one quick little thing when you look at the time factor is that in the very beginning, time is your friend. And at the end, time is your mortal enemy because it means you have to sacrifice more later to have that nest egg ready to go. If you just hold off saving, or whether you want to or not, that is the double-edged side of time, where time equals compounding equals a better return and a better nest egg. But if you wait too long, then you have to overcompensate and oversave and really hamstring your budget to make things work afterwards.
Well, and I think one of the biggest traps that people fall into is people think that retirement is the end. It's the goal. It's the place you're trying to get. Retirement is very much the beginning. And what I mean by that is you still have 30 plus years to manage these assets that you've accumulated. And it gets that much trickier once you have retired. So it's not, if you're just a couple years out from retirement, it's a different strategy than if you're in your 40s or if you're in your 20s and starting out. So age does matter significantly, as does what other people are doing for you. And that can be your group plan at work, a pension at work, or even government benefits. Any program that you're participating in, whether you're contributing personally or someone else is doing it for you, like an employer, those factor in as well. So if the money is being saved, you can discount that from your existing savings rate.
Yeah, and another thing to think of is that a lot of these planning things and these things from gurus and experts, they also think of that, oh, you're going to start saving at like age 22 or as soon as you come out of school. So again, that plays into it. But another big thing to think of is what people assume to be what a realistic rate of return is. So some people will say, oh, I'm just going to assume that's going to be 8, 10, 12, 20% for the overly ambitious people. And as long as I maintain those rates of return, I can save a little less today. But realistically, the number averaged out is going to be a lot lower.
Well, there might be a little bit of an optimism bias here where we all think only the good things are going to happen to us and all of the bad stuff happens to someone else, right? Not really forming reality. The reality that the markets go up and down, even different asset classes go up and down. Even if you diversify, things will not always go in a straight line. So this is actually a huge pitfall where people will do it themselves and they will plan by picking a rate of return. So maybe they'll say, I can do an 8% rate of return based on historical performance of the stock market, or 12%, or whatever their number might be based on their confidence level to pick their own assets accurately and successfully, but then they assume that they're going to get that rate of return every single year until the day they die. And that is just not how markets work. That's not how any different asset type category works either.
Yes, because then suddenly inflation happens, or suddenly tariffs happen, or suddenly a world leader tells the CEO of a major company to step down or else. So there's all kinds of chaos that can throw things out of a loop. So people who jump to the 8, 10, 12% bandwagon, the reality doesn't work properly anymore. So this is like, even with us, we tend to do a bit more conservative, like 4, 5, 6%. And if you get a higher rate of return, great. And if it's a bad year, well, that's usually a good time to actually buy a little bit.
Well, I think that's exactly right. So you can plan using a rate of return that's a bit more conservative, like Cam said, and then you've got a happy surprise when you outperform it. But really, life is the master at giving us the unexpected, what we didn't want, and you don't want to be in a position where you need to fall back into a backup plan or into a contingency plan or something like that. And I think the real damage that can be done by using too high of a rate of return in your planning assumptions is that you will effectively save less because you don't think you need to save as much, because you're assuming that every year you're going to get that rate of return, and you're ignoring the fact that they're averages and that there's dips that occur and there's time that you need to earn back when you've gone through a dip. So all of that matters.
Yeah, and people who overinflate their rates of return and it doesn't meet expectations, this is also where the temptation to take on even more riskier options comes in. And this is where, like, you flip a coin and either you do well or you're bankrupt.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? We find that people's risk tolerance actually drops right before retirement. And I think that this is largely correlated to this idea that you just can't go out and make more money in the same way that you could when you were 20 or 30. You can't earn it back if you've had a loss. You don't want to go to an alternate employer if you've already quit to try and make a little bit of money to keep paying your bills.
Yes. And if their risk tolerance doesn't drop in retirement, we have a very long talk with them.
No. Well, it depends on the asset level. It depends on the goals. It depends on so many things. But like I said, it's that careful balance of you need this money to last a long time. So the best way to kind of work with that is to focus on what you can control. So let's talk about that for a moment, because I think this is a key point. So I think we've made it pretty clear you can't control what the markets are going to do. I can't, you can't, no one knows. Every professional out there, we're making educated guesses based on the available information at the time, whether we're looking at a specific stock's data that they've put out or what the management has said about what their direction they're taking, whether we're looking at the overall economy or a sector. We are just making educated guesses based on the current data, and so is everyone else. So what can you control? The savings rate. You can control how much you can save by managing your expenses and managing your income level. You can also control the type of asset and the risk level that you invest in. So like Cam was saying, risk level should hopefully be consistent and come with a clear understanding of what loss would mean for you at that particular stage in your life, and how quickly you could recover or recoup from a loss. So these things are all really important. And when you're looking at asset classes, absolutely, you do look at averages, you do look at past performance, but with the understanding that nothing is guaranteed in the future. So that's why being a little bit more conservative will force you to save more and put you in the position, hopefully, of not only meeting your goals, but exceeding them. And yes, the trade-off, because there always is one, the trade-off is a little less lifestyle now with the hopes of a better tomorrow.
So after all that preamble, I guess we should actually get into what is sort of that sacred once and for all, set it and forget it savings rate that will apply to absolutely every single person listening and watching to the show.
Depends who you ask, depends on what looks good in a book, depends on the professional writing it. And to go back to our kind of complaint about rates of return and how they're used, I think a lot of it is used because it's just so easy to math, right? And the back testing can be a lot harder. So people typically go with what's easy as opposed to maybe what's a little bit more thorough and a little bit more complete. But anyways, I digress. I hear 10% and 15% being thrown around a lot as a savings rate. But like you heard Cam say, this is with the assumption that people are starting young. So if you're guessing that someone is starting at 25 when they've really kind of started to get their footing in the job market, and that they're then going to increase their savings rate as their salary increases, which, spoiler alert, doesn't always happen in real life, these are the things that are factored into these kinds of numbers. So keep in mind, this is not your number. 10% is not your number. 15% is not your number, unless you've done the math and you've realized that it actually is. Your number will be based on your age. It'll be based on where you stand today with your current savings, and it'll be based on how much is going into any accounts that are being contributed on for you or by you. So group plans at work, pension plans, government benefits, all of that stuff. Any amount of savings for that particular goal. In this particular case, we're talking about retirement that's happening for you or by you or on your behalf. So the later you start, that higher that number will be. And the younger you start, the easier it will be to manage, the lower it can be, because you'll have more time to compound. And there's always caveats. Some people start young with the idea of retiring with a really short time horizon. Oh, I want to be done at 50. I want to be done at 45, 55. That'll vary, of course, as well.
Yeah. And so one of the ways we found to kind of come up with your numbers, actually from an article we found, actually two articles we found from a T. Rowe Price, where they try to break this down by kind of using a multiplier of your income and your age combined to give you what actually looks like a reasonable number to look at.
Absolutely. And this is certainly not the only place. We've seen this in multiple places. We'll give you two different sources here on the show today, but there are many, many more out there. This is, like Cam said, kind of a quick and dirty. And this does not factor in other savings elsewhere, like the pension, like all that other stuff that you might have going in the background. So this is essentially saying if you are 35 today, you should have 1 to 1.5 times salary saved. If you're 45, 2.5 to 4 times salary. 55, 4.5 to 8 times, and 65, which is kind of really normal retirement age for a lot of people, 7.5 to 13.5 times salary saved today.
Yeah, so if you're a 35, you take your average salary and you figure out how to get that amount through a percentage, and then you just kind of keep on running that percentage all the way up. So again, this is using your age and your salary as like a multiplier to figure out a percentage for you, or at least a target for you, because you might vary by month. But essentially the goal with this one is by the time you're 35, you should have 1 year's gross salary sitting in some sort of account. And then this goes up the multiples as you get older. So that becomes your target. So if you start saving at 25, 30, by 35, you should have 1 year of income banked, and then just continue on that percentage until retirement.
Oh, that's right. And we threw in a second one as well. We found another source by Scotiabank who are also advocating a 15% savings rate. Their benchmarking looked a little bit like this: 1 time salary by 30, 3 times by 40, 6 times by 50, 8 times by 60, and 10 times by 67. So a little bit lighter than what we saw with the other one. And that is because, expectations change quite a bit depending on the people. I like to save a little bit more. That's typically my preferred, because you don't like surprises on the downside.
Yeah, and this is also a cleaner number to attain, because a lot of people just default to, I want $1 million in retirement, or some of the more recent reports we saw, I think it was about a year ago we saw this number is actually skewing to, we need 2 million. This is like the youngest response in those surveys. So 1 million, 2 million, it's a number, but actually doing the multiples of your current income is more realistic, because that is a number you are actually making. It's easier to pull a percentage off of that than what could be 30, 40% savings rate to reach a $1 million or $2 million rate, depending on your income.
Inflation is alive and well, folks, hey? And if you're not on track, if you just heard us say these numbers and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm 35, I'm 45, I'm 55, I am nowhere near these multiples, what do I do? We found another article by T. Rowe Price as well that implied that if by age 50, you had nothing at all saved, they were suggesting a 29% savings rate. And even higher, if you were 55 and had nothing saved, they had savings rates greater than 33%. So at that point, it was greater than a third of the income that you're generating having to go into savings. Now, is this realistic? Oof. It's tough, especially for people maybe that haven't been savers to begin with. We start with achievable and we increase from there. We start with a rigorous, hard look at expenses and lifestyle, and we go from there. But it proves the point that the longer you wait, the harder the lifting will be that you'll have to do. You have to lift heavy if you've waited too long, because the market does a lot of that heavy lifting for us when we start young and we save early.
Yeah, and another benefit that kind of comes by doing it this way with the multiples of your income is that in a perfect world, your income is going to go up either from changing jobs, getting raises, getting cost of living adjustments, and just the stuff like that. So your percentage will carry on. So you keep hitting that threshold of, my income has gone up, so now I need 4 times multiple of what my new one is, essentially. So this is forcing you to keep your savings rate in line with the increases in your income going forward.
Yeah, and I think that's another really important point. People love the set it and forget it.
There's a reason why everyone just does a $200 pack. I don't understand it. I look at our pack records and it's all just $200 a month for some weird reason.
Because it's just enough to feel like you're doing something without actually looking at the numbers, right? But, oh man, no, it's funny because you want people to think differently about it. It's not, what do I have in my pocket today? That'll make you a taker. What do I need to do now to create what I want? What do I need to do to have power over the actual end result and the impact to all of this?
You need to like and subscribe this podcast.
For other great tips about financial planning and as it goes. But yes, it's very important, like Cam was saying, that we don't start this and forget about it. As our lives change, as our jobs change, as our earnings change, we have to be adopting and going with that too. And we have to be making sure that we're adding more as our increased lifestyle increases with our salary, because that's the expectation that we're setting ourselves to have during retirement. Like I said, there's almost nobody that comes in and says, I want to live on less, unless they're particularly FIRE or wanting to retire super early or have some other defining reason that gives them motivation to do so.
So I know we kind of covered a lot here. We threw some numbers at you. People who can see us, we just said the numbers out to you. So I guess, Christine, what is like the one thing that either you like the most or that people should remember from all of these ramblings we have just done?
If you're doing a takeaway from our ramblings, I would say that savings rate is more important than rate of return when you're doing your own retirement planning calculations or when you're working with a financial planner. I will put a big caveat on there though, and this will be a bit of a spoiler maybe for a future episode. Savings rate matters so much when you're in accumulation. Of course, when you retire, that's done. That's when rate of return really matters. And that's when you're looking at your rate of withdrawal and how it compares to your rate of return. And if it's in excess, what your accumulation looks like there. So my biggest kind of thing to advocate today is do this with the process of an active mind. Think through it. Don't just set it and forget it. Make sure you've got checkpoints for yourself along the way to make sure you're on track and to measure your results. Because if you do surprise yourself and you accumulate faster than you'd planned, maybe you can adjust for that as well. So if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, or the Yukon, and you'd like to talk to someone about this type of planning, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. Until next time, take care.
And all the best.